What if Satoru Gojo had escaped the prison realm, but not until a full millennium had passed? For the physical universe, eras would have gone by, civilizations would have crumbled, and new forms of life would have emerged. But for him, trapped in a dimension where time doesn't flow, it all would have been just one interminable instant. 1,000 years confined in a space without light, without day, without night, existing only with his own consciousness. My name is Shoyo, and today we're going to theorize what would remain of Satoru Gojo after 1,000 years of absolute solitary confinement. But before we start, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. To understand the magnitude of what would happen if the strongest sorcerer remained trapped for 10 centuries, we first need to revisit the day the world's balance was broken, October 31st in Shibuya. Kenjaku's plan was straightforward: push Gojo's mind to exhaustion. Gojo stepped into the subway station, only to find himself surrounded by a crowd of civilians, strategically placed to put him at a disadvantage. The special grade curses Jogo, Hanami, Mahito, and Choso used humans as living shields, believing Gojo's morality would make him hesitate. They were wrong. Even with his capabilities limited to avoid slaughtering innocents, Gojo proved why he sits at the top of the food chain. In a stroke of pure technical genius, he activated his domain expansion Infinite Void for just 0.2 seconds. It was the exact amount of time needed to paralyze everyone present without killing the civilians, allowing him to exterminate roughly 1,000 transfigured humans in the blink of an eye. But it was in that precise moment of mental fatigue, right after deactivating his domain, that the final trap was sprung. The prison realm Gokumankyo was revealed before him. For the seal to work, Gojo needed to remain motionless within a 4-meter radius for 1 minute. Physically, holding Gojo for that long was impossible. But the rule specified 1 minute within the victim's mind. Kenjaku knew this, and that's why he appeared wearing the body of Suguru Geto, the best friend Gojo had executed with his own hands a year prior. In that moment, 3 years of memories from his blue springtime of youth flooded Satoru's mind. The shock, the confusion, and the nostalgia paralyzed his brain. A mental minute passed in a fraction of a second. The prison realm's gates opened, the flash currents bound the untouchable, and the seal was closed. On that day, Satoru Gojo fell. But in our alternate history today, what was supposed to be a 19-day sentence turns into isolation for 1,000 years. So we arrive at the central question: what would happen if he were only released in the year 3018? For this scenario to work, we need to clarify the technical mechanics of the prison realm. The artifact has 2 parts. The first is the front gate, which was in Kenjaku's possession. This is the main cube, and whoever holds it holds administrative authority, the power to command it to open or close. That's why, at that time, only Kenjaku could voluntarily release him. But make no mistake, if another sorcerer took the front cube, they would gain that authority. The second part is the back gate, which was under Master Tengen's guard. Unlike the front, this part has no command authority. Tengen sealed this door to try and hide the presence of the front part, which was useless. That's why whoever has the back gate can't simply ask it to open. It functions like an emergency exit that needs to be broken into. A simple analogy would be to imagine the prison realm as a bank vault. The front is the digital keypad where you type the password. The back is the exposed wiring behind the vault. If you don't have the password, you need a specific tool to short circuit it and force it open. This explanation is crucial because for our scenario to work, certain events need to change. First, we need to reinterpret Kenjaku's line. Many fans think he said the seal would open on its own, but the line in chapter 90 was, the seal will break in 100, no, maybe 1,000 years. Kenjaku was being ironic, suggesting he might decide to release Gojo only in the distant future, or that the seal's validity would eventually expire. In this new universe, let's assume the front gate has a validity limit of 1,000 years. Kenjaku decides not to release Gojo, trusting the cube to keep him contained until the new era is consolidated. Furthermore, a tragic event must occur. Hana Kurusu, the angel, must be killed by Sukuna immediately after he possesses Megumi's body. Since the inverted spear of heaven and the black rope had already been destroyed by Gojo in the past, the angel's death would eliminate the only remaining way to force open the back gate. With that, the requirements for a what if are complete. Gojo never returns for the final battle in Shinjuku. Without Satoru Gojo to face Ryomen Sukuna, history changes drastically. There is no sorcerer capable of dealing enough damage to weaken the King of Curses. Yuta, Maki, and Hakari would fight bravely, but they would be slaughtered. Sukuna would exterminate the Jujutsu High sorcerers. Kenjaku, in turn, would act with much more freedom. He admitted himself that he only stayed close to Sukuna out of fear of Gojo. Without that threat, Kenjaku conducts his plans without hesitation. Still, I believe the students, led by Yuta, would eventually manage to eliminate Kenjaku, perhaps using Takaba's technique, as in the original. With Kenjaku's death, the authority over the merger would pass to Megumi Fushiguro, who would already be under Sukuna's total control. The king King of Curses would then initiate the merger of humanity with Tengen. This would result in a grotesque being, an entity of pure cursed energy capable of destroying the world. And here we enter the first possible scenario. Let's consider that Sukuna, being the pinnacle of sorcery, would manage to defeat and subjugate this monstrosity from the merger. After that, he would live a purely hedonistic life. Hedonism is the pursuit of pleasure above all else. Sukuna wouldn't destroy the planet on a whim. He would just kill whoever bored him, eat whatever he wanted, and live without laws, since nothing could threaten him. 68 years would pass. We would reach the year 2086, and then an irreversible change would occur. The threat from human blood itself. The global environment, saturated by Sukuna's chaotic energy and the remnants of the Age of Curses, would force a spiritual Darwinism. Human biology would collapse. Those who didn't adapt would die. Ordinary humans would go extinct. In their place, a new generation would be born. Neo-sorcerers. Beings born with brains adapted for sorcery, bodies tough as steel, and most terrifyingly, without any trace of the empathy that defined ancient humanity. Kenjaku's dream of optimizing cursed energy would have happened in the worst way possible, through brute natural selection. If Sukuna were still alive in Megami's body, he would be amused by this violent new race. But realizing the world had become a chaos of constant battles that could last centuries, it's likely he would decide to skip time. To avoid death by old age and fight against the peak of this new civilization in the future, Sukuna would split his soul into fingers again, turning into cursed objects and entering a dormant state. And so 1,000 years would pass under the dominion of this new, cruel humanity. Finally, in the year 3018, the prison realm's mechanism would fail. Satoru Gojo would be released. He would awaken in an unrecognizable world, realizing that despite his faith in his students, no one managed to free him. The shock would be devastating. He would see that the jujutsu world he knew no longer exists. But this lamentation would be brief. Gojo would inevitably sense Sukuna's presence. We would then have the clash of the strongest with a 1,000-year delay. If Sukuna won, he would continue his eternal cycle of reincarnation and boredom until the end of time. But if Gojo were the winner, he would find himself in an empty world. Everyone he loved died 10 centuries ago. He would be a god wandering through ruins without purpose, condemned to live out his memories until dying of natural causes. In the second scenario, the focus isn't Sukuna, but society. Upon interacting with the inhabitants of 3018, Gojo would realize the cruel truth. These neo-sorcerers aren't the humans he loved. They are efficient predators. In this society, compassion is viewed as a genetic defect. The weak are eliminated at birth. Upon understanding that the humanity he protected, the one that laughed, cried, and made mistakes, was extinct and replaced by these logical monsters, Gojo would break. He would be seen by them as a relic, an incomplete and emotional human. The confrontation would be inevitable. Gojo against the children of the world he failed to save. If he won and exterminated this new civilization to avenge the memory of ancient humanity, the irony would be supreme. Gojo, the protector, would have to commit genocide to honor the dead. He would become a solitary god on a silent planet. Finally, we have the third scenario, the bonus scenario, and in my opinion, the most realistic and disturbing one. We go back to the moment of the merger. Here, let's consider that the merger monster won everything. It killed Sukuna, killed the sorcerers, and destroyed civilization. What would remain on Earth would be just this titanic entity wandering alone for centuries. But the focus here isn't the monster, it's Gojo's mind. In chapter 221, it is stated that time doesn't physically pass inside the prison realm. There is no hunger, no sleep, no physiological needs. Existence is purely consciousness. In an interview, the author Gege Akutami said, if Gojo thought too much inside, he'd go mad. So he does everything to keep his mind empty. That worked for 19 days. But imagine keeping your mind empty for 1,000 years. It's impossible. Human sanity, even that of an enlightened being like Gojo, has limits. If he were sealed for a millennium, it is almost certain he would lose his reason. He would be trapped in loops of memory, hallucinations, and distortions of reality. In this scenario, it doesn't matter who ruled the Earth, Sukuna, the evolved new humanity, or the merger monster. The result would be the same. When the seal opened, the Satoru Gojo that emerged wouldn't be a hero anymore. He would be completely insane. He wouldn't distinguish friend from foe, past from present. He wouldn't be a hope, but a natural catastrophe. Driven by primal instincts and a fractured mind, he would begin to destroy everything he found. He would use hollow purple to erase any form of life, not out of malice, but because the logic of the world would no longer make sense to him. In this tragic timeline, Gojo wouldn't be humanity's salvation, but its definitive full stop. The strongest sorcerer would become the god of destruction, ending Earth's history with the void he carried for 1,000 years.